Hello, hi, welcome to today's Bible study. Today we're going to look at disobedience. We're going to dive straight in and look at three major things that the Bible says about disobedience. These are not the only things, but these, however, were highlighted to me as the key things that we needed to start with regarding the topic of disobedience. So the first key thing was disobedience leads to withdrawal of God from our lives. There are two verses we're going to read. I'm going to display the verses over here, so just read with me. Proverbs chapter 1 verse 24 to 32. I called you so often, but you wouldn't come. I reached out to you, but you paid no attention. You ignored my advice and rejected the correction I offered. Therefore, I will laugh when you are in trouble. I will mock you when disaster overtakes you. When calamity overtakes you like a storm, when disaster engulfs you like a cyclone, and anguish and distress overwhelm you. When they cry for help, I will not answer. Though they anxiously search for me, they will not find me. For they hated knowledge and chose not to fear the Lord. They rejected my advice and paid no attention when I corrected them. Therefore, they must eat the bitter fruit of living their own way, choking on their own schemes, for simpletons turn away from me to death. These verses need no much further explanation, except to say that when we disobey God, we live out of His will, out of His protection, and we will essentially not enjoy His blessings when we disobey Him. Because we enjoy the benefits of God when we obey God and draw from His knowledge. When we, read the Bible and know about what He's actually teaching us to do. And when we follow His ways, we enjoy God's protection and God's blessings. When we don't, we are exposed to all kinds of disaster. So that's the one major thing that we needed to point out regarding disobedience. So let's look at the second major thing. However, before we go to the second major thing, I have put a verse down below. Please look at it. Leviticus 26, verse 14 to 21. Please read it. It's another extract that talks about the punishment of disobedience. I know the book of Leviticus is quite hard, but it's good for us to know these truths because they are in the Bible. So the second major thing regarding disobedience is disobedience leads us to death. Okay, so we're going to look from James. So this is a book that we've looked at prior. Disobedience leads us to death. James chapter 1 verse 14 to 15. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. Now, this is not a new verse. I know this is not a new verse for you, but it draws the link between our desires, temptation, sin, and eventually death. And I'm sure we can draw these lines in our lives, maybe in our past life if we have turned away from our old ways, and maybe in the lives of some of our friends, of some of our family. We can see that things don't seem to be going right with them. And if you looked in the past, you could draw a link from where the source of the current distress could be coming from. So we could even go ahead and expound on that and say that, there's that discussion regarding our times of death and whether it's possible for us to die sooner than what God's will had actually. And from this, you can see that yes, it is possible, because when you're living out of the will of God, you're living in disobedience, you're living out of His protection, and you're not living in the perfect will of God. So yes, it could be possible that because of sin, you actually die sooner than God had planned, because you're even living out of His will. All right, the third major thing that we need to look at regarding disobedience is that the Bible says that we should avoid people who who choose to live in disobedience. I should have actually started with that one, but I thought that it was good to look at withdrawal of God, then look at how disobedience leads us to death, and then look at people that could influence us to live a life of disobedience, how the Bible tells us that we need to avoid. So avoid people who live in disobedience. So the verse for our study today is from 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 1 to 7. Paul is writing to Timothy. You should know this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be very difficult times. For people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving. They will slander others and have no self-control. They will be cruel and hate what is good. They will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than actually just, but they will reject the power that can make them. Stay away from people like that. So stay away from people like that. I'm sure in our lives we know this. Stay away from them. Seek the right company. Seek people who can actually lead you to God. Okay? Seek people that can actually encourage you and teach you about the ways of God, teach you about the good things of God, such that you can be led to live in the full abundant life that God actually planned for you and planned for you. So that's it for today's Bible study. We're not going to keep it long. So disobedience part 1. Once again, disobedience 1 leads to withdrawal of God from our lives. 2, disobedience leads us to death. And 3, we need to avoid people who choose to live in disobedience. Let's remember those 3 things this week. I'll see you in the next video where we'll look at disobedience part 2. Thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe and share with your friends and your family. Bye.